beneficial. So when you take a look at this section that's on the type here, this is the measure. It's in a 3D modeling section that Photoshop has, and you'll see a couple of tricks. The only tricky part is that when this renders, it takes an awful long time, so we might just take you up to that one level. But on a newer layer at least, you can open this up, and I have these directions in a folder, so you can take a look at it. So it's setting this with a font that has all caps on here, so just kind of placing this on here, free transforming it so you can change this. You can make it whatever type you want to. The text tool inside of here, just the option, you can bump this across and onto that section. And this part here, they just have you try to take the first initial, make it a slightly larger. So here's all the pieces up at the top that you can increase or decrease that part. And then it has you take the type and go to the warp again. So you, like I said, it's almost repeating what it was, just using the three-dimensional part, trying to get you introduced into that. So far that's the first couple of steps that are there. So there it is, making the character a little taller. Taking a look at the arch in this section for that piece, and then it says let's make it 3D. So you have a couple ways to do that. You can double click on the icon of the layer, and you'll get the 3D panel up at the top along with all the others as well. So when you click on that, it may take a moment to render, but it'll put it in a 3D window. It has the perspective and the horizon line, everything that's there. And the tools up at the top have it, the rotation, scaling, everything. Just leave the mouse over, it'll tell you what it is, and just experiment with it. When you're rotating this part, you're seeing a top view panel. You can always hide that too. And this will let you just grab it and rotate it all around to try to fit into that style that they're doing. You'll see there's an X, Y, and Z coordinate on here that you have 3 options on each direction to manipulate that part. So that gives you that section. So that's the first part. And you get to the section that you like. But as you go through it, you'll see some of the directions for it. So here, when you get into the 3D panel, it's right next to the layers. And it's just having you change the front color of all of this. So again, this is where you may want to experiment with things, but just for the front. It'll bring up the materials panel up at the top. If you double click on it, it'll bring the color picker that you can pick the colors from. This kind of just go into a bright yellow for that piece. So it's kind of obviously simulating that first section that you saw. Clicking back in here to get to the layers. So that's bringing that color with the color panel picker, and then taking a look at the outside edge. This part you can put the lighting section on, and that's what this initial selection is. So back on the 3D layer, you can see you have these options, and again, leaving the mouse on it will bring it up. But here's like a semicircular section for the light, and again, it starts off as the default, but you can adjust the light when you play that around. So it's pretty fun to take a look at, see how the 3D section goes in there. And that's going to be for that piece. And then they're just having you put a stroke on the outside edge of the panel. So we'll click on the layer piece and take a look at that. Here you already have some textures and the default, so just going to put the stroke, if you remember from before, and that puts it onto that section right there. And then the last section is just using some of the parts that are going to render it. So it does have a cast shadow. And when you take a look at this rendering, it says hold down Command Option Shift R and then a comma. So it's a Windows, and then Control Alt Shift R is for a Mac. And let's hide some of these layers here. So this part so you can take a look at it. That's the part where it's going to take some time to render it, and then it'll let you remove the cast shadow. But hesitate on that rendering section, so take a look. So that any of these pieces, if you don't render it, the panels won't show the same as on the directions. And then they go in to try to change the stroke that has the outside of the lettering because it doesn't have a piece on there, but they duplicate a layer to do that. And then they go into this mesh section, so that's where they're placing that in there. So take a look up to that point at least, and then you'll see that you'll get to this section. And again, when you see this part here before it's rendered, it may look a little pixelated, and then again when you render it, it becomes takes some time to do so. One trick that you can do is, and I'll try it off screen, but just to show it to you, is you can take this selection and you can go to image and duplicate this, let you get going, and take the crop tool and just crop this section so that this is all you have. And right now you can see a little bit of the cast shadow there. So when you get to that level, if you can remember the directions, that's why I duplicated, at least you can see the directions to then go ahead and try to render this smaller version of it to help you in eliminating all these layers. So for example, I can take all of these layers, since it's a duplicate copy, and just delete them. So that'll make the file size much smaller, and then you can give the rendering a try there, even cropping it down a little further than that. So I'll leave that up to you, but as you turn this in, just even if that would be sufficient, because I understand the rendering will slow you down. So send it from that direction right there, just taking a screenshot from that. So I'll put that beneath this and Command-Shift-4. So this way I can at least turn that part in so you get the idea of how the three-dimensional section works.